It's time for the Las Vegas Sportsline, brought to you by the Sunset Station with sports director Chuck Esposito. Presented by WagerTalk.com.
Here we go, a brand new week on the Las Vegas Sportsline. I'm Dave Cokin. Ralph Michaels is here. He's sitting in for Marco D'Angelo today, who's basking in the sun down in the desert at spring training, watching some baseball games in Arizona down there with Brian Leonard and some other folks. I am jealous. I'm Dave Cokin. Ari Platinum is here. Chuck Esposito in just a little bit. We will talk first, Ralph, about the Stone Age. The Stone Age has arrived in Las Vegas in the person of Mark Stone, and the Golden Knights are perfect in the Stone Age.
Yeah, well, how much can you make out of it? Because they were a big favorite in each of those games.
Still
but
3-0.
Putting the wins together are big. Being able to have the backup goalie get a win is big. And the momentum. I mean, momentum is a funny thing. It's one piece to the puzzle, be it legitimate or not, gets players excited and get them on a run. So exactly what they needed, exactly at the right time.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, to me, one of the keys is that they're able to spread things out a little more.
Yeah.
In terms of how they approach things, positioning. Stone he's actually, it's not just that he's a really good hockey player. He's physically imposing. He is a big dude. And I think this team needed a little more strength up front in terms of scorers with size, if you will. And this is actually, to me, even including the 18-3-3 run, this is the best they've looked all season to me. They look more like last year's team right now than, in my opinion, than at any prior point this season. I like the way they're playing right now. And what that means is I think the other teams in the West better take note, because with the now reigning player of the week in the NHL, number one star for the week, Marc-Andre Fleury, looking to be in good form and probably going to get some rest down the stretch. He'll play most of the games, but not all of them, certainly. I think Golden Knights are a really dangerous team early in the Western Conference playoffs and maybe throughout the Western Conference playoffs. It's not like, to me, there's not one dominant team in the West right now. The best team in hockey is clearly the Tampa Bay Lightning. And the West, to me, looks like it's wide open, and that means the Knights are alive.
Well, swagger and confidence are two important terms in hockey. And by acquiring a player of his caliber at the break, the team really bought in that this franchise is going to do what they need to do to win. So from that aspect, I think it was an uplifting move, and the players now show what they're capable of playing when they're at a high level.
Speaking of uplifting, nice win by UNLV on Saturday. They win and cover in overtime. So a little bit point spread luck, if you will, for the locals who might have backed them, or anybody else for that matter, as they get the victory over Boise State. Had to come back a couple of times in that game. It's a big win for them in terms of their Mountain West Conference seeding, because it puts them in position now to be able to relax and avoid that opening round. So that's a good thing.
Top 5 seeds get that bye, and I mean, it's a huge deal not having to play that extra day. So you are now facing a tired team day 2, and you have the home crowd behind you. An important, hopefully a nice little run coming here for the Rebels.
And speaking of home crowds, might have gotten a little out of hand in Logan on Saturday night. Utah State gets the huge win over Nevada.
Bonus LPT play of the day on Friday.
Yes, that's right. It was. And the Aggies probably punching their ticket to the NCAA tournament in the process. But all the buzz now is about the aftermath of the game. Some wild stuff taking place, and it'll be interesting to see what the Mountain West Conference is able to uncover as far as some accusations levied by some Nevada players about some racial slurs being fired. We know that there was some touching going on between some of the fans and the Nevada players. And I'll tell you something. If you talk about a hot ticket, I mean, I don't know what took place there. What I can tell you is this, though. The Mountain West Conference tournament, if it comes down to Nevada and Utah State in the final game, there might be some fireworks down at the MAC.
Dave, you talked about situations like this on Friday's show. 2 winners that you mentioned. If they don't face each other, this is a look to next year and mark your calendar type situation.
It really is.
When they play each other. So, again, for those that weren't with us on Friday, we talked about these after-game situations. This one got a lot more publicity than the others.
Well, this one got pretty nasty, too. I mean, Jordan Caroline ends up punching a
Fire extinguisher. Yeah.
That's I'm glad he didn't hurt himself.
Yeah, breaking your hand in that situation would have been horrific. So
he was really upset.
It's going to be a game to watch.
Oh, let's see. That's enough. Let's get to tonight's games. It's a limited schedule, but there's some good matchups. We'll check some of them out right now. In the Monday, MJ Christensen Diamonds 4-4.
1, 2, 3 into the 4.
Put them fours up. Put the fours up, I said. Do it right now.
Tonight's action is just around the bend, and the guys want to get your night off to a great start.
4.
It's the Las Vegas Sports Lines 4 at 4.
Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4. Unbelievable.
No, it's not unbelievable. It's the 4 at 4. And by the way, MJ Christensen, I'll be getting some new information from the gang at MJ in the next day or two, which I'll pass along to you as far as specials and exciting stuff for the month of March at MJ Christensen. So stick around and you get details on that in the next couple of days. Nuggets and Spurs is the best of the NBA matchups tonight, Ralph. It's not a small schedule, but there's a lot of not-so-hot matchups. This is one of the better ones. San Antonio finally getting back at home and looking to make a push down the stretch to get themselves into position to be playing in the postseason. And then obviously the Nuggets will be a part of the postseason. Good matchup tonight in San Antonio.
You know, both of these teams are two of the best teams at home, two of the worst teams on the road. But I'll tell you what, I don't know what to make of Denver. Back-to-back losses. I can understand the loss to Utah. Then at home, then they follow that up. They're a 14-point favorite. They have an 18-point lead against Anthony Davis and the Pelicans, and they lose that game. Those are the head-scratchers in the NBA, that to have that lead. I think there's only one way to go. San Antonio back home after the rodeo trip where they only went 1-7. 20-11 ATS at home, and I will back the Spurs.
Let's go to the college ranks, and one of the projected number one seeds is in a tough location tonight at the Carrier Dome. Should be a fun night as Syracuse plays host to Virginia. The problem for Syracuse is I don't know how well they match up with Virginia, and I think this is going to be a competitive game, but I just can't, I think the number's probably about right in this game. I don't think Virginia's going to go in and slaughter them, but it's kind of tough to make a case for Syracuse in a game they're probably not real likely to win.
I mean, when you're allowing 37% to conference foes and you're playing ACC opponents, those are like Xbox numbers for Virginia.
Really,
I mean, they really are playing that
are
lights out. Syracuse at home, though, 38%, two incredible numbers. Dave, Virginia is like the Patriots. On the road, since January of 2016, they're 30-8, 79% against the spread on the road.
That's amazing.
If you just bet them every game. That includes a 9-1 run this year and a 17-2 run on the road their last 19 games.
When you keep the opposition off the board and you don't stop playing defense, and it becomes really tough for a team to catch up late in the game. And Virginia's able to stretch these leads more often than not, and that contributes to that phenomenal record.
At home, they're laying the double digits with the inflated home edges, and that's why they're winning those games and not covering. But you're laying these single-digit numbers on the road, and that just tells you why they're like they are. For me, it's one way. It's if Virginia's laying a touchdown or less, I use that because when you get to that double-digit range, if you're playing on the road, I won't plaque them. But Virginia's made me quite a bit of money playing them on the road this year.
Kansas State has made their backers a lot of money pretty much anywhere. Since Big 12 play began, they are the team to beat as far as the regular season in the Big 12 is concerned. And they could take a big step toward getting to that top spot, number one seed in the conference tournament, if they can win at TCU tonight. It's been a disappointing campaign for the Horned Frogs. I don't think there's any other way to put it. I think TCU has been an underachiever this year. Yes, they've had some injuries, but, you got to go with the flow on those, and other teams have had injuries and played through them. TCU just has not been able to find the mix that they want this season. It's not like they're a bad basketball team. I don't want to make it sound like they're a bunch of stiffs. But if you go back to the preseason projections in the Big 12 and where TCU figured to be, it was as a contender. And they're just not. It's been a disappointing season for them. And I don't know. There are some people who look at the coach and say, this is typical of him. He takes teams to a certain point and can't get them any further. And that reputation's kind of getting validated a bit this year.
Today in the Fort Worth paper, he's making a statement that we're still a tournament team, but not when you're 1-5 down the stretch.
Yeah.
Good point.
NIT, okay.
But, I think if you're going to play the game, to me, it would be Kansas State. Now, they didn't make my card because you are playing with that added pressure now. And this game and the next game we're going to talk about, they're both tied for the lead. You know, one step up and you slip and you lose the Big 12 regular season title.
Well, and the other thing is that off those comments, you know, it's rather obvious that this is being treated as a really big game for TCU, because if the coach is saying, well, you know, I still think we're a tournament team, well, you better go out and get this one. And you better go out and get to 20. You got to get to 20 wins, and you got to start winning a few conference games. I think this team's got to do well at the end of the regular season, and I think they're going to have to win a couple tournament games, to be honest with you. Otherwise, to me, they don't belong. Whether they get in or not, I don't know, because I'm not one who picks the field. What I do is I try to put the right teams in the field, and you frequently will be some disagreement between myself and the selection committee. So I look at TCU right now and say they do not belong in the tournament. However, a win tonight and maybe a couple of good wins down the stretch, and maybe they squeeze in, because the conference, the strength of the conference will help them as far as that's concerned.
You know, this is one of those final home games, senior night, and you're coming off. The reason I didn't play Kansas State tonight is TCU is coming off by far their worst performance. They allowed Texas Tech to shoot 57%. If you know Jamie Dixon, if he has a team that allows 57%, there's going to be some changes, and this is desperation mode for them.
I think I'd lean TCU in the game, but I didn't play it. I didn't play anything tonight, and that includes this game, Texas and Texas Tech. But I know one thing. I don't feel like going against Texas Tech right now. It looks like Chris Beard is getting the Red Raiders to peak at the right time, and I think they're going to be the team to beat in the Big 12 tournament.
Another coach for potential coach of the year. I mean, this team wasn't supposed to be here. Only returned one starter, and the way he has them playing and playing well down the stretch. I just did make a future bet on TCU as well. I just think now
TCU or Texas Tech?
I'm sorry, Texas Tech.
Okay.
You look at their last loss. Their last loss was at Kansas, and since that time, they've reeled off wins and covers. Their only game they don't cover was the letdown at Oklahoma State when they beat Kansas a couple games ago. And you can understand that. You beat Kansas at home, you let down, then you go to TCU and you crush them. So, final home game at Texas. They are thrilled tonight. I could see this easily turning into a 20-point blowout.
Wow. Well, against Texas, that would be doing something. Chuck Esposito joining us right now, as he does on Mondays from Sunset Station. Hi, Chuck. What's going on?
Hey, guys. How are you today?
Very good. March Madness is here. We have a conference tournament tonight, which won't get a lot of attention. It's the Atlantic Sun, but that's the signal that, you know, the most fun time in the college basketball season is now upon us. It's going to be exciting at Sunset Station, obviously. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Let's go to Saturday, though, because I want to go back to the game between Utah State and Nevada. Your impressions of where these two teams are right now, particularly Nevada, as opposed to where they were early in the season as far as their projections are concerned. Is Utah State in the tournament now, and what about what took place after the game?
Well, first, Nevada. I know when we spoke a couple of weeks ago, I thought they could potentially be a 3 or 4 seed. Don't feel that way today. However, I still think they're a very, very good school, and I think they definitely can win a couple of games. I'm still kind of teetering on Utah State right now. I think see how everything breaks down in the tournament for them. But what happened afterward, I think the fact that they were able to get to those players like that is something needed to be done. I don't like the way that occurred, but I think it was some frustration on Nevada as well with the way they've been playing over the last few games.
It was almost like deja vu from way back when. Tark hated going to Logan. He didn't like it at all because the crowd there was a really nasty home crowd. And that's going way back to the glory days of UNLV. So I guess they haven't lost that ability to be pretty rough on visitors. And, it wasn't a good look for Utah State.
No, it clearly wasn't. But you're right. It's been that way. I remember in the Tark days there was a lot of smaller, arenas like that where you knew that the opposing fans were right on top of the players. And you remember seeing the trouble that those UNLV teams, as good as they were, had playing in those smaller arenas with the fans right on top of them. And it just hasn't changed.
Dave and Chuck, just to point out that Utah State, and if they're in the tournament, You just using Ken Palm as an example, I think Rhode Island would be the example from last year. Rhode Island was 26-8, went